Detroit never truly slept. Even at 3 in the morning, the lights of office buildings pierced through the fog, and the occasional car still crawled along deserted streets. In one of those illuminated windows on the 23rd floor of a business center, Robert Henderson sat hunched over a stack of documents. At 52, he still looked impressive. Broad shoulders, graying temples that gave him an air of authority, and the steely gaze of a man accustomed to making decisions. His construction company, Henderson Development, was one of the largest in the state, specializing in commercial real estate. Over the past 15 years, he had built half of the shopping malls in the suburbs of Detroit. Robert sipped his whiskey and glanced at his watch. Sarah was probably already asleep. His wife always went to bed early. She had a full day at school tomorrow, where she had been teaching English literature for 20 years. They had married in college when he was 22, and she was 20. At the time, he was just starting out at his father's construction company, and she dreamed of becoming a writer. Dreams change. Now Sarah Henderson was known not only as a talented teacher, but also as an active member of the charity board at the city hospital. Their house in the prestigious suburb of Grosse Pointe was worth $2 million, and their garage housed a BMW and a Mercedes. From the outside, it looked like the American dream come true. But Robert knew that a beautiful facade could hide a rotten foundation. He stared at the financial statements again. The numbers were relentless. The last 3 major projects had failed due to zoning and environmental issues. The banks were demanding early repayment of loans. If a serious investor couldn't be found or a new deal closed within the next 6 months, the company would go bankrupt. Robert closed the folders and reached for the phone. He needed to talk to someone who understood the business. Someone who wouldn't ask unnecessary questions about why he was working so late and wouldn't look at him with the expression of disappointment he was seeing more and more often in Sarah's eyes. Melissa Craig answered on the 3rd ring. "Robert? What's wrong?" Her voice sounded concerned, but not surprised. Calls like this had become commonplace over the past few months. "I need to talk to you," he said. "Not on the phone." Half an hour later, they met at a 24-hour cafe on the edge of downtown. Melissa looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, her hair tousled, a jacket thrown hastily over her pajamas. At 34, she was still an attractive woman, but the last few months had clearly taken their toll. "I got another notice from the bank," she said, not waiting for him to speak first. "They're threatening to take the house. Thomas doesn't know. He thinks I'm just working overtime." Robert nodded. Melissa was a loan officer at Michigan Trust Bank, one of the banks that was now putting pressure on his company. The irony of the situation did not escape him. "How much?" he asked. $80,000, plus interest." Her voice trembled. "Robert, I don't know what to do. If Thomas finds out..." Thomas Craig worked as a master mechanic at an auto repair shop and earned an honest $45,000 a year. He had no idea his wife owed the banks more than he could earn in 2 years. "How did this happen?" Robert asked, even though he knew the answer. Melissa lowered her eyes. "You know how it is. It all started with that house in Bloomfield Hills. I thought I could flip it quickly. Then there were other investments. I used my position to get information about good deals. Everything was going well until the market crashed," Robert finished. She nodded. "I thought I could fix everything. I took out loans against the house, used credit cards, She faltered. "What?" "I even took money from the church nursery fund. I was the treasurer. $30,000. I thought I could pay it back before the audit, but..." Robert felt something cold tighten in his chest. "Melissa, this isn't just debt. It's embezzlement. If they take you to court..." "I know!" Her voice grew louder, and several patrons turned to look. She lowered her voice. "I know, okay? You think I don't understand what kind of mess I'm in?" They sat in silence for several minutes. The cafe was almost empty. Just them, a sleepy waitress, and an elderly man in the corner reading a newspaper. "Why are you calling me?" Melissa finally asked. "You have your own problems." Robert sighed. "Sarah wants a divorce." Melissa looked up. "Does she know?" "About us? No, at least I don't think so." He twirled the ring on his finger. "But she senses that something's wrong. Maybe it's the money. Maybe she's just tired of me. Yesterday she said we needed to have an honest talk about our future." Melissa smiled bitterly. "You know what's funny? We're both destroying our marriages, and for what? For a few months in motels and stolen lunches? Robert didn't answer. Their affair had begun 8 months ago when he came to the bank to discuss a line of credit for a new project. Melissa was his loan officer. At first, they were just business meetings, then lunches, then long conversations about life, dreams, and disappointments. He hadn't planned on cheating on Sarah, 30 years of marriage, 2 children already in college. But with Melissa, he felt young and needed. She admired his success, listened to his plans without criticizing or pointing out problems. Now they both had problems more serious than an ill-fated affair. "I have to go," Robert said, glancing at his watch. "I have a meeting with my lawyers early tomorrow morning." "Robert, wait." Melissa grabbed his hand. "I can't live like this anymore. Every day I wake up terrified that everything will be revealed. Thomas is a good man. He doesn't deserve this. What do you want me to do? Help me. Lend me some money. I'll pay you back as soon as I can." "Melissa, I don't have any money myself. The company is on the verge of bankruptcy. But you have a house, cars, investments. Everything is mortgaged, every last penny." Melissa let go of his hand. "Then we'll both go down." Robert stood up, leaving $20 on the table. "I won't go down. I'll think of something." "What about me?" He didn't answer. On his way home, Robert thought about how easily life could fall apart. A year ago, he was a successful businessman with a strong marriage and a stable future. Now he was hiding his bankruptcy from his wife, the real state of affairs from the banks, and the fact that he could no longer help his mistress. The house in Grosse Pointe greeted him with dark windows. Sarah was asleep. Robert quietly went into the kitchen and poured himself a whiskey. Through the window, he could see Lake St. Clair, black and calm in the pre-dawn silence. His phone vibrated. A message from Melissa. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pressure you, but I don't know what to do." Robert deleted the message and turned off his phone. He had 3 weeks before the banks officially began bankruptcy proceedings. 3 weeks to find a way out or lose everything. He didn't know that upstairs in the bedroom, Sarah was awake. She lay in the dark, listening to her husband walking around the house, thinking about what she had found in his jacket pocket 2 weeks ago. A bill from a motel in Royal Oak. A bill for a room they had rented for more than one night. Sarah Henderson was a patient woman. 20 years of teaching had taught her to observe, analyze, and wait for the right moment, and she felt that moment was approaching. 2 weeks had passed since that night in the cafe. Robert Henderson sat in the conference room of his office, surrounded by lawyers and accountants. Documents were spread out on the table like a gambler's cards, each sheet representing a new problem. "So, Mr. Henderson," said the senior lawyer at Coleman and Partners, an elderly man with a gray beard, "we have 3 options. The first is to try to restructure the debt with the banks. The second is to find a strategic investor who will buy a controlling stake. The third is bankruptcy." Robert finished. "Chapter 11 will give you time to reorganize, but your reputation will be ruined forever." Robert rubbed his temples. "What about personal guarantees?" The lawyer avoided his gaze. "Your house, your cars, all your personal assets are collateral. If the company goes bankrupt, I'll lose everything. Almost everything." At that moment, Robert's phone rang. Sarah. He declined the call. "I need time to think," he said, standing up. "Give me until the end of the week." When everyone had left, Robert remained alone in his office. The panoramic windows offered a view of Detroit, a city that had once been a symbol of American industrial power and was now slowly recovering from decades of decline. Robert often thought that his own fate mirrored that of the city. The phone rang again. This time it was Melissa. "Robert, I need to see you, urgently." "I can't right now." "They know." Her voice trembled. "About the money from the fund. Someone told the church." Robert closed his eyes. "Where are you?" "Belle Isle Park, by the old conservatory." Half an hour later, Robert found Melissa sitting on a bench in front of the ruined conservatory. The October wind was blowing the last leaves off the trees, and she was shivering in her thin jacket. "Tell me everything," he said, sitting down next to her. "Pastor Davis called this morning. He said he received an anonymous letter saying that something was wrong with the foundation's finances. They're conducting an emergency audit tomorrow." Melissa stared at the lake, where a lone seagull circled above the gray water. Robert, I'm dead. It's not just losing my job, it's prison. Who could have known? I don't know. No one was supposed to know. She turned to him. Only you. Robert felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. You think I'm... No. No, of course not. But who else? I didn't tell anyone. They sat in silence, watching the few passers-by hurry past, wrapped in their coats. Detroit in October was unforgiving. Gray skies, a cold wind from the lake, the feeling of winter approaching. What are you going to do? Robert finally asked. I don't know. Run away, I guess. Take the kids and go somewhere far away. What about Thomas? Melissa laughed bitterly. Thomas will find out everything tomorrow when the police come with a warrant. Do you think he'll forgive me for stealing money from the children? For lying to him for months? Robert didn't know what to say. He thought about his own problems, about talking to the lawyers, about how in a few days he might have to explain to Sarah why they were losing their home. I need money, Melissa said quietly. At least $100,000. To pay back the church and disappear before they arrest me. Melissa, I already told you. Do you have insurance on the company? Robert looked at her. What do you mean? Executive life insurance. Most large companies have policies on their owners. Yes, we do. $2 million. He paused. Melissa, what are you suggesting? Nothing. Just asking. But something in her voice made him wary. Meanwhile, 15 miles away, Sarah Henderson sat in the principal's office at St. Margaret's School, where she taught. Across from her sat Dorothy Lawson, the principal and her close friend of 10 years. Are you sure this is what you want to do? Dorothy asked. Sarah nodded. I hired a private investigator 3 days ago. He gave me this today. She placed a thick folder on the table. Dorothy didn't open it. Sarah, sometimes it's better not to know. No. Sarah's voice was firm. It's better to know the truth. Always. The folder contained photographs. Robert and Melissa entering a motel in Royal Oak. Robert and Melissa having lunch at a restaurant in the suburbs. Robert and Melissa kissing in a parking lot near a bank. The dates on the photographs covered the last 8 months. Who is she? Dorothy asked quietly. Melissa Craig. She works at the bank where Robert has loans. She's married with 2 children. Sarah flipped through the photos with mechanical precision. The detective did a little digging. She has serious financial problems, debts, late payments. You think she's using Robert? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe they're both using each other. Sarah closed the folder. Dorothy, I want to ask you a strange question. Of course. Do you remember the story of Medea? Dorothy frowned. From Greek mythology? The woman who killed her children to avenge her unfaithful husband? Exactly. I've been teaching Euripides' play for 15 years, and every time I think, can love really turn into such hatred? Sarah, you're scaring me. Sarah smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to kill anyone, but I am going to destroy them both. That same evening, Thomas Craig sat in his garage, repairing his old Chevrolet. Working with his hands always calmed him, especially when he felt that something was wrong. And in recent weeks, that feeling had not left him. Melissa had become strange, nervous, distracted. She was constantly checking her phone, flinching at every ring. She said she was having problems at work, that the bank was laying people off. But Thomas had known his wife for 12 years and sensed that it was more than just work. The garage door opened, and Melissa walked in. She looked pale and tense. Tom, I need to talk to you. He put down his keys and wiped his hands on a rag. What's wrong? Melissa sat down on an old chair in the corner of the garage. If I did something really bad, something that could destroy our family, would you forgive me? Thomas felt something cold tighten in his chest. What did you do, Mel? Answer my question, please. He looked at his wife, the woman he had loved since they met in college, the mother of his children, the person he trusted more than anyone else in the world. It depends on what you did, he said honestly. Melissa covered her face with her hands. I can't tell you. Mel, whatever problems we have, we can work through them. Together. She lifted her head, and he saw tears in her eyes. No, Tom. Some things can't be fixed. The next morning, private investigator Ray Morgan sat in his car across from the Craig's house in the Dearborn neighborhood. Sarah Henderson was paying him $500 a day to watch Melissa, and so far it had been easy money. At 8:15, Thomas left for work in his pickup truck. At 8:45, Melissa left the house, but instead of heading to the bank, she drove in the opposite direction. Morgan followed her to a shopping center on the north side of town. Melissa parked near a large sporting goods store and went inside. Half an hour later, she came out with a small bag. What could a bank manager be buying at a sporting goods store during work hours? Morgan called Sarah Henderson. "Mrs. Henderson, I have some interesting information." That same day, Robert received a call from his banker. "Robert, I'm sorry, but we can't wait any longer. The board of directors has made its decision. You have 72 hours to pay off the overdue debt or we will begin foreclosure proceedings." "How much?" $2,400,000. Robert hung up and stared out the window. 72 hours. He had 72 hours to find a sum of money he couldn't get his hands on in 72 years. His secretary peeked into his office. "Mr. Henderson, your wife is on the line." Robert picked up the phone. "Hi, honey." "Robert, we need to talk. Tonight, after dinner." Something in Sarah's tone made him wary. "About what?" "About our marriage. About your affairs. About what's going to happen." The line went dead. Robert realized that 72 hours was optimistic. He might only have a few hours before his world came crashing down. In her office at the school, Sarah Henderson opened a desk drawer and took out another folder. The cover read, "The Plan." Inside were bank documents, Robert's company financial statements, details of his debts. She knew more about the company's bankruptcy than Robert himself did. She knew the deadlines, the terms of the insurance policies, who would get what if he died. Sarah had always been a good teacher, and good teachers know that the most important lessons require careful preparation. The evening began as usual. Sarah had prepared dinner, rosemary roasted chicken, Robert's favorite dish. They sat in the dining room of their home in Grosse Pointe, and everything looked perfect. Expensive china, candles, a view of the lake through the panoramic windows, but Robert could feel the tension hanging in the air like an electrical charge before a storm. "How's work?" Sarah asked, gracefully carving the meat. "Fine," Robert lied. "The usual hustle and bustle." "No problems with the banks?" Robert froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. "Why do you ask?" Sarah smiled, the same smile she gave her students before a difficult exam. "Just interested in my husband's affairs. That's normal, isn't it?" They finished their meal in tense silence. When Robert reached for the wine bottle, Sarah gently touched his hand. "Honey, maybe we shouldn't. We need to talk seriously." "About what?" Sarah stood up and walked over to the sideboard. She took out a thick folder and placed it on the table between them. "About Melissa Craig." Robert's world stopped. On the table were photos of him and Melissa, their dates, their kisses, the motel in Royal Oak. Dates, times, details. "Sarah, I can explain." 8 months, she said calmly. 8 months you've been lying to me every day. 8 months you've been seeing this woman while I've been working and supporting our home. Robert tried to take her hand, but she pulled away. "It's not what you think. It's not love. It's just..." "What? Sex? Fun? A way to cope with stress?" Sarah's voice remained steady, which was more frightening than shouting. "Robert, I don't care about your motives. I care about the consequences." She flipped through a few pages in the folder. Miss Craig is in serious financial trouble. Debts, overdue loans, and now an investigation into the embezzlement of church funds. A pretty desperate situation for a married woman with 2 children. "How do you know?" "I have my sources." Sarah moved on to the next section. "Your company is also in crisis. The banks are demanding early repayment of loans. According to these documents, you have 72 hours. Robert felt the room begin to spin. "How did you get these documents?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is that now I know the truth. About the company, about the debts, about the fact that we could lose this house." Sarah closed the folder. "And about your mistress, who may see you as a way out of her own problems." "Sarah, please." "No." She stood up. "This conversation is over. Tomorrow morning, you're moving out." My lawyer will contact your lawyer about the divorce and division of property. As for your financial difficulties, that's now entirely your problem. Robert grabbed her arm. Sarah, don't do this. Not now. I can fix everything. She looked at him with an expression he had never seen before. Cold, calculating, almost cruel. Robert, you can't fix what's already broken, and I'm not going down with you. That same night, 15 miles away, Melissa Craig couldn't sleep. She lay next to Thomas, listening to his steady breathing, thinking about how quickly life could turn into a nightmare. Tomorrow, the church would audit the fund. The day after tomorrow, in 3 days at the most, the police would come with a warrant. She had less than 48 hours of freedom. She got up quietly and went to the kitchen. In the desk drawer was a bag from a sporting goods store. Inside was a small pistol, a Smith & Wesson .38 caliber. The salesman had said it was a good weapon for self-defense. Simple, reliable. Melissa picked up the pistol and felt its weight. She had never held a gun before, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. I know about the church money. Meet me tomorrow at 8 p.m. Belle Isle Park, Old Conservatory. Come alone. Melissa stared at the screen. Who could it be? Robert? But why would he text from someone else's number? She tried to call back, but the number was unavailable. Robert spent the next day at the office trying to find a miracle. He called investors, bankers, old acquaintances. No one wanted to get involved with a sinking ship. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, his banker, David Palmer, the man he had worked with for the last 10 years, walked in. Robert, I'm sorry. Time's up. David, give me another week. Just 1 week. Palmer shook his head. The decision has been made. We're filing the papers with the court tomorrow. The foreclosure process will begin on Monday. When the banker left, Robert was alone in his office. He stared at the photo on his desk, him and Sarah on their wedding day, young and happy. 30 years ago, he thought he knew what his life would be like. A successful business, a strong family, a secure retirement. Now he had nothing. The phone rang. Melissa. Robert, I need to see you, today. It's urgent. I can't. Sarah kicked me out of the house. It's over. That's why we need to meet. I have an idea. Melissa. Belle Isle Park, 8 o'clock, the Old Conservatory. She hung up. Robert looked at his watch. It was 3:30. He had a few hours to decide whether to go to the meeting with the woman who had ruined his marriage or simply disappear from the city. But where could he go? He had no money, no future, no choice. At 6 o'clock, Sarah Henderson met with private investigator Ray Morgan at a cafe in the city center. Is everything ready? She asked. Morgan nodded. The anonymous message has been sent. She'll be there. And the recording device? The microphone is set up near the conservatory. It has a range of 50 meters. All conversations will be recorded. Sarah handed him the envelope with the money. After tonight, your services will no longer be required. Mrs. Henderson, are you sure you know what you're doing? These people are desperate. They might... Mr. Morgan, I'm a literature teacher. I study human nature professionally. Desperate people make predictable mistakes. She stood up. Just make sure the recording is clear. At 7:30, Melissa arrived at Belle Isle Park. It was a cold October evening, and the park was almost empty. She parked near the old conservatory and sat down on a bench. The gun was in her purse. She didn't know why she had brought it, but desperation makes people irrational. At 8:05, Robert appeared. He looked terrible. His suit was rumpled, his face unshaven, his eyes red. Who sent the message? He asked, sitting down next to her. I don't know. I thought it was you. They sat in silence for a few minutes, both realizing that their lives were falling apart at the same time. Robert, Melissa said finally, I have a proposal. What is it? Your insurance, $2 million. Robert looked at her. And? That's enough to solve your financial problems and mine too. Melissa, what are you proposing? She took the gun out of her purse and placed it on the bench between them. I'm proposing we end this nightmare. Robert stared at the weapon. You're out of your mind. Maybe, but I'd rather be dead than in prison. Her voice trembled. I'll be arrested tomorrow. Thomas will find out everything. The children will find out that their mother is a thief. I'll lose everything I have. But that's not a solution. It's the only solution. She grabbed his arm. Robert, if you die, the insurance company will pay out. Sarah will get $1 million. The company will get $1 million. The debts will be paid off. Your reputation will remain intact. And what will you get? Melissa fell silent. Then she said quietly, freedom. Robert understood. You want me to kill myself, and you'll make it look like murder. Not murder, an accident, a robbery gone wrong. Melissa, this is crazy. It's a way out. She took the gun. Robert, we're both dead. The only difference is how many people we take with us. If you die now, Sarah will be taken care of. Your children will get their inheritance, and I'll disappear. Start a new life somewhere far away. Robert looked out at the lake, where the city lights were reflected. What if I refuse? Then tomorrow we'll both be in prison, our families destroyed, and our children will be ashamed of our names for the rest of their lives. In the bushes, 50 meters away, a sensitive microphone recorded every word. I can't, Robert finally said. I can't die like this. Melissa raised the gun. Then forgive me. Melissa, no! The shot rang out loudly in the evening silence. Robert collapsed to the ground, and Melissa realized she had crossed the line of no return. She quickly searched his pockets, took his wallet, watch, and wedding ring. Then she threw the gun into the lake and ran to her car. 10 minutes later, she was driving down the highway out of town. In the rearview mirror, Detroit gradually disappeared into the night mist. Melissa Craig thought she had committed the perfect crime. She didn't know that every word of their conversation had been recorded, and that the woman who had arranged the meeting had already called the police. Sarah Henderson sat in her home, listening to the recording and planning the next stage of her revenge. Robert was dead, but this was only the beginning. Melissa Craig would learn what it meant to destroy someone's life. The sound of a gunshot echoed across the waters of the Detroit River. Melissa Craig stood over Robert Henderson's body, the gun still smoking in her trembling hands. Time seemed to stand still. Only the sound of the wind in the bare branches and the distant hum of the city broke the dead silence of Belle Isle Park. Robert lay on his side, his eyes wide open, staring into nothingness. A dark stain of blood slowly spread across his white shirt. Melissa felt nausea rising but forced herself to act. She didn't have much time. She quickly put on the gloves she had brought with her and began searching the body. Wallet, take it. Expensive Rolex watch, take it. Wedding ring, pull it off his finger. Cell phone, smash it and throw the pieces in different directions. It had to look like a robbery gone wrong. She threw the gun into the lake with all her strength. It disappeared into the dark water with a quiet splash. Then Melissa tore off her jacket and used it to wipe her fingerprints off the bench and everything else she could touch. Only then did it dawn on her. She had killed a man. Not in a fit of rage, not in self-defense. She had cold-bloodedly shot a man who trusted her, who loved her in his own way, and she had done it for money. Melissa ran to her car, parked in the shade of the trees. Her heart was beating so hard, it felt like it was about to burst. Her hands were shaking as she put the key in the ignition. The engine wouldn't start, and she almost screamed in despair. Finally, the car started. Melissa slowly backed out of the parking lot, trying not to attract attention. Only when she was on the highway did she allow herself to speed up. The plan was simple. Drive home, gather the bag she had prepared with her things and money, leave a note for Thomas saying she was going to visit her sick mother in Colorado, and disappear forever. By the time Robert's body was found, she would be hundreds of miles away from Detroit. Melissa didn't notice the dark car that had been following her for several blocks. Meanwhile, Sarah Henderson sat in her home in Grosse Pointe, listening to a recording of the conversation on her headphones. The quality was excellent. Every word, every breath, even the sound of the gunshot was recorded clearly. She fast-forwarded to the moment when Melissa said, "Then I'm sorry," and heard the gunshot. Sarah pressed pause and took off her headphones. Robert was dead. The man she had lived with for 30 years, the father of her children, had been killed by his mistress for money. She should have felt grief, anger, shock. Instead, Sarah felt a strange calm. The first part of the plan was complete. Now the second part began. Sarah picked up the phone and dialed the emergency number. 911. What's the nature of your emergency? I want to report a murder. My husband was shot in Belle Isle Park about 20 minutes ago. Ma'am, how did you find out about this? Were you a witness? No, but I know who did it, and I have proof. At the Craig's house in Dearborn, Thomas was watching TV in the living room when he heard the front door open. Melissa entered quickly, nervously avoiding his gaze. "Hi," he said. "How was your day?" "Fine." Her voice sounded tense. "Tom, I need to go to Denver to see my mother. She's not feeling well." Thomas frowned. "When?" "Now. Tonight." "Mel, what's going on? You look—" "I'm fine, just tired." Melissa quickly went upstairs. Thomas turned off the TV and followed her. He found his wife in the bedroom frantically packing a suitcase. "Melissa, stop!" He took her by the shoulders. "Look at me." When she looked up, Thomas saw such fear in her eyes that his heart sank. "Honey, what's wrong?" "Nothing, Melissa began to cry. "Tom, I can't tell you, but I have to go, right now." "Where? For how long?" "I don't know. Maybe for a long time." Thomas felt the ground slip away beneath his feet. "Are you leaving me?" "Not you. The situation." Melissa closed her suitcase. "Tom, I've done something stupid. Something really stupid. And if I stay, I'll ruin not only my life, but yours and the kids, too." "What stupid thing? Mel, what are you talking about?" She kissed him on the cheek. "I'm sorry. I loved you. I still do." Melissa picked up her suitcase and headed for the door. Thomas tried to stop her, but she broke free. "Melissa, don't do this. Whatever happens, we can work it out." But she had already run out of the house. A minute later, Thomas heard the sound of a car driving away. He stood in the doorway, staring at the empty road, not realizing that he had just lost his wife forever. Detective James Walker arrived at the scene 20 minutes after Sarah's call. Belle Isle Park was cordoned off, and forensic technicians were working around the body. Flashbulbs lit up the October darkness. Walker was a veteran Michigan State police officer with 20 years of experience. He had seen many murders, but this case seemed strange to him from the start. "What do we have?" he asked Sergeant Davis. "Robert Henderson, 52, owner of a construction company. 1 bullet in the chest, shot at close range, wallet empty, no watch or rings. Looks like a robbery. But his wife called 911 before we got the report from the passerby who found the body, and she claims she knows the killer." Walker nodded. "Where is she?" "On her way here. She said she has some recordings." Half an hour later, Sarah Henderson's car pulled up to the park. She got out of the BMW wearing a black coat, her hair neatly pulled back. Even in this situation, she looked composed and in control. "Mrs. Henderson?" Detective Walker approached her. "My condolences. I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you a few questions." "Of course." Sarah's voice was calm, almost businesslike. "But first you need to hear this." She handed him the tape recorder. "This is a recording of my husband's conversation with his killer. It's a complete recording of what happened here tonight." Walker frowned. "How did you get this recording?" "I knew they were going to meet. I arranged the meeting." "What do you mean?" Sarah told him how she found out about her husband's affair, about Robert and Melissa's financial problems, about how she realized that desperation could drive people to crime. "Are you saying you foresaw the murder?" Walker couldn't hide his surprise. "I foresaw that one of them would do something desperate. That's why I set up the recording." Sarah looked at her husband's body under the sheet. "I thought it would be enough to stop them, but I was wrong." Walker turned on the tape recorder. The first few sentences made him forget everything else. "Your insurance, $2 million. So what? That's enough to solve your financial problems and mine too." The detective listened as the drama unfolded. Melissa's despair, her offer to kill herself, Robert's refusal, and finally, the gunshot. "Then I'm sorry." Bang. "My God," Walker whispered. "We have a full confession and a recording of the murder. The killer is Melissa Craig, manager of Michigan Trust Bank," Sarah said. "She was my husband's mistress and is in desperate financial straits." Walker immediately relayed the information to dispatch. "All units, Melissa Craig is wanted for murder. Consider her armed and dangerous." But Melissa was already far from Detroit. She was driving south on Interstate 75 toward Toledo. In the car was a duffel bag containing $30,000 in cash, everything she had managed to save over the past few months. It should be enough to get her to Mexico and start a new life. Melissa turned on the radio, hoping to hear music, something to distract her from thinking about what she had just done. Instead, she heard a news report. The body of businessman Robert Henderson was found in Belle Isle Park at around 9 p.m. Police are searching for Melissa Craig, 34, on suspicion of murder. Melissa slammed on the brakes and pulled over to the side of the road. How could they have found out so quickly? The body had been found less than an hour ago, and the police already knew her name? She tried to turn on her phone, but remembered that she had thrown it away in the park. With no communication and no way of finding out what was going on, she was blind. Melissa realized that she needed to get to the border as quickly as possible. Every minute she spent in the United States increased the risk of arrest. She set off again, unaware that her car had already been spotted by highway surveillance cameras and that every police officer within 100 miles had been given her photo and license plate number. In Detroit, the investigation was gathering momentum. Detective Walker was questioning Thomas Craig at the police station. The man looked devastated. In a matter of hours, he had learned that his wife had killed a man and fled. "I don't understand," Thomas repeated. "Melissa couldn't kill anyone. She's afraid of spiders. She can't watch blood in movies. How could she?" "Mr. Craig, your wife was under tremendous pressure," Walker explained. "Debt, the threat of prison, despair. People in situations like this are capable of things they would never have thought possible before. But why did she kill Henderson?" Walker played the part of the recording where Melissa talks about insurance. Thomas listened to his wife's voice, suggesting murder for money, and couldn't believe his ears. "That's not her," he whispered. "That's not my Melissa." But it was her, and now she was on the run, and every hour increased the distance between her and justice. At 3 in the morning, Melissa stopped at a gas station in a small town in Kentucky. She was exhausted, her eyes heavy with fatigue, but stopping was dangerous. Too great a risk that she would be recognized. As she filled up her car, a police car pulled up to the next pump. Melissa's heart skipped a beat. The officer, a young man in a sheriff's uniform, got out of the car and headed for the store. Melissa tried to look natural, but her hands were shaking as she put the gun back in the tank. The cop glanced at her but walked past. She quickly paid and got back in the car. Only when the police car disappeared in the rearview mirror did Melissa allow herself to breathe. But the respite was short-lived. An hour later, as she entered Tennessee, a police car with its lights flashing pulled up alongside her. Melissa panicked, but the car drove past, heading for some other incident. Still, she knew this couldn't go on. She had to change her plans. At dawn, Detective Walker received a message from the Kentucky Highway Patrol. Melissa's car had been spotted by cameras at the state line. She was heading south, probably toward the Mexican border. "How far ahead of us is she?" Walker asked the dispatcher. "About 6 hours. But if she doesn't stop, she could reach Texas by evening." "And Mexico?" "In a day, maybe less." Walker realized that time was against them. If Melissa crossed the border, extradition could take years, if it happened at all. He called the FBI. This case required federal intervention. Meanwhile, Sarah Henderson sat at home, drinking coffee and reading the morning news online. The story of Robert's murder was already on the front pages of local websites. Businessman killed by mistress for insurance money. Family drama ends in murder. Police search for female killer. Sarah was satisfied. The first part of her plan had worked perfectly. Robert was dead, Melissa was on the run, and she would soon be caught. But that was only the beginning. The real revenge would begin when Melissa was arrested. Then Sarah would make sure that this woman got the punishment she deserved. Life imprisonment, or, if she was lucky, the death penalty. Sarah Henderson was a patient woman, and she was willing to wait as long as it took to see justice prevail. Melissa Craig was arrested in Cleveland, Ohio, 6 days after the murder. Not at the Mexican border, as she had planned, but in the parking lot of a 24-hour supermarket where she was buying baby food and diapers. She wasn't going to Mexico. After 2 days on the run, panic gave way to a different kind of despair. Melissa realized she couldn't live knowing her children were growing up thinking their mother had abandoned them. She couldn't let them carry the stigma of being the children of a murderer without explaining the truth. Detective James Walker found her in a cheap motel room near her sister's house in Cleveland. On the bed were the children's clothes she had bought but had been unable to deliver. On the table was an unfinished letter to Thomas. "Mrs. Craig," Walker said as he entered the room with 2 police officers, "we know you're here." Melissa sat on the edge of the bed, holding a child's toy in her hands. "I won't resist," she said quietly. "But can I finish the letter first?" The arrest went smoothly. Melissa even seemed calm, like someone who had finally stopped running from the inevitable. In Detroit, Sarah Henderson received a call from Detective Walker around midnight. "Mrs. Henderson? We've taken Melissa Craig into custody. I thought you might want to know." Sarah was sitting in the living room of her home in Grosse Pointe, which was due to be repossessed by the bank in a few weeks. Boxes of personal belongings were stacked in the corners. She was preparing to move. "Where did you find her?" "In Ohio. She wasn't trying to leave the country as we thought. It looks like she was trying to contact her family." Sarah hung up and poured herself a glass of wine. The first stage was complete, but she felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion. The next morning, private investigator Ray Morgan arrived with his final report. "The job is done," he said, handing her a folder. "Here are all the documents, records, and photographs. I destroyed the copies as you requested." Sarah leafed through the documents, months of work that had led to the murder of her husband and the arrest of his mistress. "Mr. Morgan, I have one last request. I'm listening. Forget that I hired you. If anyone asks, say you were working for an insurance company." Morgan nodded. He understood that the woman did not want it to come out that she had effectively arranged the murder of her own husband, using his mistress's desperation. Thomas Craig learned of his wife's arrest from a neighbor who had seen the news on television. He sat in his empty house. His children had been staying with his mother for a week because he didn't know how to explain what was happening to them. His first feeling was relief. The agonizing uncertainty was over. Now he knew where Melissa was, knew she was no longer on the run, no longer in danger. His second feeling was anger, not at his wife, but at himself, for not noticing how deeply she was in debt, for not insisting on an honest conversation when he sensed that something was wrong, for letting his family fall apart without trying to save it. Detective Walker arrived at his house that same day. "Mr. Craig, your wife wants to see you. Visits with relatives are allowed in prison." Thomas shook his head. "I'm not ready. She also left a letter for you." The letter was short. "Tom, I'm sorry. Not for what I did. That's unforgivable. I'm sorry for making you live with this. Take care of the kids. Melissa." Thomas burned the letter in the sink and stared at the ashes being washed away by the water for a long time. The trial began 7 months later. Melissa confessed to the murder during the preliminary investigation, but the prosecution went ahead with a full trial anyway. The case was too high profile. Sarah attended every hearing and sat in the front row, not out of a desire for revenge, as the journalists thought, but because she felt obligated. She was as much a part of this story as Melissa was. The defense tried to get a second-degree murder conviction, citing emotional distress and extraordinary circumstances. But the recording of the conversation in the park was too clear. Melissa had planned the murder in advance. "Your Honor," Melissa said when the judge gave her the last word, "I will not ask for leniency. I killed a man for money. That is a fact. The only thing I ask is that my children not be held responsible for my actions." The sentence: 25 years in prison without parole. After the sentence was handed down, Sarah waited for Thomas outside the courthouse. "I need to talk to you," she said. Thomas looked exhausted. He had lost weight during the trial and aged several years. "About what?" "About your children. About what happens next." They went into a cafe near the courthouse. Sarah ordered coffee. Thomas didn't want anything. "Mr. Craig, I know you plan to stay in Detroit. This is our home." It was, but now everything has changed. Sarah took out a folder. "Your wife didn't just steal money from the church fund. Bank records show large transfers from corporate accounts. Thomas turned pale. How much? About $200,000 over the last 2 years. The bank has decided not to press charges for now. The murder case has attracted enough attention. But if this information becomes public, what do you want? Sarah looked at this man whose wife had killed her husband and suddenly felt not anger but exhaustion. I want you to leave, move to another city, start over, far away from all this. And if we stay? Then I'll make sure that all the information about Melissa's financial misconduct becomes public knowledge. Your children will grow up in a town where everyone knows that their mother is a murderer and a thief. Thomas was silent for a long time. Do you really think that's fair? I think fairness is a relative concept. Your wife killed my husband. Now she's in prison. But that's not enough for me to live in the same town as her family. Give us time. 2 months. 2 months later, Thomas Craig sold the house and moved with his children to Portland, where his sister lived. Before leaving, he left a letter for Sarah Henderson. Mrs. Henderson, we are leaving as you wished, but I want you to know that my wife killed your husband, but you killed my family. Perhaps it is fair from your point of view, but my children will grow up without a mother because of a crime they did not commit, and without a home because of a revenge they did not deserve. I hope this brings you the peace you seek. Sarah read the letter while sitting in her new apartment in downtown Detroit. The house in Grosse Pointe had been repossessed by the bank, and the insurance company refused to pay, citing suspicious circumstances surrounding Robert's death. She got what she wanted. Melissa in prison, the Craigs banished from the city. But the price was higher than she expected. Friends drifted away, some out of sympathy for her grief, others out of fear of her cold vindictiveness. Her colleagues at school avoided talking about anything other than work. Her children called less and less often. They had disappeared into their adult lives even before their father's death. And now they didn't know how to communicate with a mother who had become a person they didn't recognize. Sarah understood this. Revenge had changed her, made her cold and calculating. She had become a person capable of destroying a family of children for the sake of her own peace of mind. But there was no peace. A year after the Craigs moved, Sarah received a letter from Melissa in prison. Mrs. Henderson, I know I have no right to write to you, but there are things that need to be said. I killed your husband. That is a fact I will have to live with for the rest of my life. But I didn't plan to kill him when I went to the meeting. I brought the gun because I was afraid. I was afraid of arrest, prison, shame. When Robert rejected my plan, I realized I had no way out. The shot was fired in a panic, not in cold blood. That's not an excuse. It's an explanation. You got what you wanted. I'm in prison. My family is destroyed. But I want you to know the price of your victory. My children are growing up thinking their mother abandoned them. Thomas works 2 jobs to make ends meet. They live in a strange city, hiding their real names. Maybe it's fair. Maybe the families of murderers should pay for the crimes of their loved ones. But children don't choose their parents. I hope this revenge has brought you peace, because no one else has found peace. Melissa Craig. Sarah reread the letter several times, then placed it in her desk drawer with the other documents related to the case. She had no intention of responding. But the letter made her think about the price of justice, about the difference between punishment and revenge, about how many lives can be destroyed in an attempt to restore balance. Robert was dead. Melissa was in prison. The Craig family was in exile. Sarah was left alone in an empty apartment with memories of a broken family. Justice had prevailed, but no one had won. 5 years later, Sarah Henderson was teaching literature at a different school, living in a different neighborhood, occasionally dating a man who knew nothing of her past. Life was slowly getting back to normal. Sometimes she thought about Melissa in prison, about the Craig children, who were now teenagers. She thought about what might have been if she had chosen forgiveness instead of revenge. But these were fleeting thoughts. For the most part, she just lived, worked, read, watched movies. She tried to forget the time when revenge seemed more important than anything else.